Hello, everyone. So we are now live and the meeting recording has begun. So good evening and welcome to today's neighborhood meeting. My name is Dana Suddaby and I'm a planner with the city's Development Services Department. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to present to you the neighborhood, a development concept being considered by the owner and development team of 550 to 576 Essa Road prior to a formal development application being submitted to the city. This provides an opportunity for the development team to hear initial community feedback and incorporate it into their plans prior to making a full and formal development application to the city. Please be aware we are recording this meeting for the public record. The recording will be used for the purpose of garnering your input and to respond to inquiries and will be considered public information. Please also be aware that as you are a registered attendee tonight, your mailing or email address will be added to the mailing list so that you can receive further information about this application as it progresses. Should you have questions regarding this collection, please contact the Development Services Department. I would also like to let everyone know that there are staff behind the scenes managing the technology tonight. They're here to make sure the meeting runs smoothly, to grant participants the opportunity to speak, and to assist with any questions in the chat. Please bear with us if we have any issues. And if for any reason you get disconnected, please feel free to log in again. The intent of tonight's meeting is to provide the members of the public with an opportunity to become familiar with the development application and planning review process, and also to ask the applicant questions and provide feedback. So what to expect during the virtual neighborhood meeting? A brief overview of the city's review process and timing, a presentation from the applicant's representative describing the proposal, and an opportunity to ask questions of either the applicant or city staff and provide comments or identify concerns with the application. So what not to expect? City staff recommendations on the application or a detailed analysis on the proposal, as this will occur later in the review process, and a debate on the merits of the proposal between city staff and the applicant. Before we get into the presentation, I just wanted to quickly highlight the next steps in the application process. This neighborhood meeting is established early in the development process to ensure local concerns are incorporated or addressed through the city's review. After this meeting, we will expect that the applicant will make a formal application submission for this development project. Formal submissions undergo a full technical review and must address comments received from the neighborhood meeting, from the city's technical department, and external agencies, and from members of the public more broadly. In conjunction with this, a statutory public meeting will be held virtually on the application at Affordability Committee. At the public meeting, applicants present their application to council, answer questions, and provide an overview and response to any issues or concerns identified during and prior to the neighborhood meeting. As part of the public meeting, members of the public also have an opportunity to provide verbal or written comments. Following the public meeting, staff will continue the technical review process, and the applicants will make any necessary revisions to the development proposal. Once the review process has concluded, a staff recommendation report will be brought forward to council for their consideration. All comments received throughout the review process, including those received at the neighborhood and public meetings, are identified and addressed in the staff report and form part of staff's recommendation on the subject application. A staff report for this particular application would likely be brought forward sometime in 2026. I will now move on to the applicant's presentation, and as I mentioned, the proposed project and application will be presented first, which will follow with a question and comment period. So tonight we are focusing on the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment proposed at 550 to 576 Essa Road from the applicant's planner, which is Eric Brathwaite from MHBC Planning. So the proposal is for an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, which will facilitate a high density development and permit increased heights along the Essa Road intensification corridor in the form of 16 and 18-story rental apartment buildings and with 3-story townhouses. I will now hand the meeting over to Eric, who will first introduce themselves and then share their presentation on the proposed development.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Brathwaite, an associate planner with MHBC Planning. Also with me, I have representatives from Sweeney and Co., Crozier Engineering, and JDB Landscaping, representing the full scope of the project team for items related to servicing, transportation, and architecture. I will just share my screen in the presentation. Sorry, can everyone see my screen? Perfect. So again, just starting with the scope, as Dana had mentioned, the property is located at Mapleton Avenue and Essa Road. This red property consists of the property fabrics that are comprising the proposal for the subject lands. The existing official plan designation, the properties designated as a neighborhood area. So what our official plan amendment would be doing is changing this designation to a high density designation. The existing zoning on the property has two different general zonings, one being the residential apartment dwelling second density zoning, which is represented by these brown areas on the map. And then it's also has the zoning of a mixed use corridor to the north with these pink area on the map. The site currently has an existing eight-story residential apartment building, which is still undergoing construction. This property has historic zoning approvals and an approved site plan application to permit 116 dwelling units that are still in the process of being constructed. In terms of the surrounding context, adjacent to the site is an existing commercial plaza with the lands to the south of the site being undeveloped at the time, but there is an existing development approval for an eight-story building. Which leads us to the surrounding context of the plan. So you can see that the surrounding area has a number of commercial and eating establishments within close proximity to the plan. And to the southeast, there is an existing employment area providing some non-industrial and industrial land uses. Uh, to the north of the site is additional neighborhood area uses within this area, as well as some additional parks surrounding the subject lands. Further to that, the site has transit within walking vicinity. There's three existing bus routes within the surrounding area. So bus route 8A, runs generally in an east-west fashion on Mapleton on the west side, and then transitions to a north-south orientation from the Essa Road direction. And then to the south of the site, the bus service 7A and 7B runs in a north-south fashion on Essa Road, and then also operates in an east-west fashion along Mapleton Avenue, with other existing transit routes along Veterans Drive, which is just outside of the 500-meter radius, but provides additional connections to the Allendale GO station. So the purpose of our application and the amendments being sought. So as Dana had mentioned, the application is going to permit a high density development and allow for increased heights along the intensification corridor in the form of 16 and 18-story mid-rise rental apartment buildings. To facilitate the development proposal, we will require an official plan amendment, a zoning bylaw amendment, and then if approved by council, we will have to also apply for a site plan approval application. So for the details of each individual application, the official plan application will be focusing on redesignating the lands from the neighborhood area to the high density designation to allow for the proposed density along the intensification corridor. The zoning bylaw amendment proposes to rezone the lands to permit the mid-rise apartment buildings as well as permit the townhouses to the rear of the subject lands. The zoning will establish development standards specifically for the site and facilitate items such as heights, setbacks, bicycle parking, and amenity space requirements. Finally, if the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments are approved, we will have to submit a site plan approval application to conduct detailed review, ensuring development takes place in a safe, efficient, convenient, and aesthetically pleasing manner, and new development is compatible with the existing neighboring properties. And these are just some conceptual renderings of what the proposed development would look like looking to the northeast. So this road here would be Essa Road and the frontage. This building is the existing uh, in under construction mid-rise 8-story apartment buildings. And this is a view from Mapleton Avenue looking south. So you can see the townhouses to the rear of the site adjacent to the existing neighborhoods to provide that transition from the higher densities to a lower density built form. And this is a street view of the rear townhouses from internal to the south. So this would be looking east towards the rear of the property. So you can see that we would facilitate sidewalks along the internal driveways, areas for parking, as well as streetscapes in the form of trees, potential snow storage areas, and other things for the pedestrian and vehicular movements on the site. And finally is provided a view looking at the proposal from the existing neighborhood. So this would be Mapleton Avenue where this yellow car is located and showing what the sidewalk and what the perspective would be from the existing established neighborhood from a street perspective of the proposed building. So you can't see it, but the 8-story mid-rise would be located within the middle of the proposed development. Uh, this image here is our proposed site plan. Key things to note, we're proposing an entrance on Essa Road. So currently the individual dwellings have their own individual private driveways. We would be consolidating the driveways on these sites to form one driveway entrance from Essa Road, which is already existing through the Phase 1 development. We would be providing a secondary access from Mapleton Avenue to provide for internal vehicular movement as well as ingress and egress from either Essa Road or the Mapleton Avenue. Further to this, this provides a general layout of the proposed bicycle parking spaces located here, as well as some other spaces on each of the lands and outlines some of the outdoor amenity spaces that are to be provided. So this outdoor amenity space located on the Phase 1 lands was secured through the Phase 1 site plan approval that would be amended through our proposal and application. The townhouses would also provide some rooftop amenity spaces that could also be used by the occupants of the dwellings. Overall, because this is a larger site and a significant amount of development, it would undertake a phasing plan. So as discussed previously, the Phase 1A is the center of the plan, which already has that existing partially constructed 8-story building. That would remain, and we would build onto the plan and move to Phase 1B, in which the townhouses would be provided at the rear adjacent to the existing neighborhood. To the south of the site would be the Phase 2, where we would introduce the 16-story mid-rise building fronting Essa Road, and then also similar to the Phase 1B, also introduce some townhouses to the rear of the property. Finally, the third phase would provide the 18-story mid-rise building and provide that egress and ingress from Mapleton Avenue, as well as the townhouse buildings to the rear for the full development of the site. And then these are just following some detailed focused areas of the different phases of the development. So as discussed before, there's additional space to provide landscaping opportunities, a proposed playground within this vicinity, some bike racks, some seating areas, as well as private gardens that can be utilized for outdoor amenity spaces by the residents of all three phases. And then similar, as discussed, you can see the proposed stairs connecting to the public sidewalk to promote pedestrian movements throughout the site, as well as to the external Essa Road. And then finally, the phase three plan frames the corner of Essa Road and Mapleton Avenue, provides some outdoor amenity space on the fifth floor, as well as these townhouse areas and landscaping features to the side of the site. And just to provide some project statistics at a quick glance, the FSI of the site is proposed to be 2.49, and we are providing 806 units is proposed with the development, which equates to approximately 429.9 units per hectare, which aligns with the density requirements in the town's official plan for the high density designation. We are proposing a mixture of one bedroom, two bedroom, and three bedroom units, as well as some townhouse units. So this is a concerted effort to provide a mix of housing options to facilitate all different housing needs. We don't want to just provide single bedrooms. We also want to provide some larger units to provide family-sized units to accommodate all stages of life and family needs. In terms of the vehicular access that we're proposing to provide 580 visitor parking spaces, sorry, 580 resident parking spaces and 80 visitor parking spaces. There will be a limited number of surface parking spaces. The intent is that the development will have underground parking, which would limit the vehicular and pedestrian movement conflicts and promote a more friendly site organization. And then finally, as Dana had mentioned, that we have not submitted a formal application yet. As part of the formal application, we will be providing a planning justification report, an urban design brief, a wind study, a functional servicing report, a geotechnical and hydrogeological report, a stormwater management report, transportation impact study, environmental site assessments, and also providing a construction management plan as part of the site plan approval process. And finally, we will be providing a comment response matrix to provide some preliminary responses to the comments from staff, as well as the comments that we will hear tonight. So thank you, and I will pass it back to Dana if there are to facilitate the Q&A.